Thank you so much, Andrea, for joining me today. I know we've been working together for what, is it almost like a year now?
I think so.
Getting
Yeah.
close, yeah. So I've been on your marketing team and I technically know your journey and story a little bit, but I wanted to have you retell it today and dive in a little bit deeper. My goal with these spotlight interviews is to share the ups, the downs, the good times, the tough times, the lessons, the secrets and tools that have helped you build a thriving photography business and join the top 1% of photographers in our industry, making six figures or more from their passion. So I know your story is going to inspire and motivate other photographers to know that they too can build a thriving photography business.
Yeah.
So just to get started, I'd love to have you introduce yourself, tell us where you're located, kind of a little bit about you, a little bit of your backstory.
Okay. So I'm Andrea Witt. I run Boudoir by Andrea Witt. Really clever, I know. So I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm a mom of two, wife, just busy. And I kind of got into photography, just loving photography, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. But then I just sort of zeroed in and specialized in boudoir. And it's kind of like given me new life. And like, it's just been a really amazing experience. Like to be able to like go to work every day and just like enjoy what I do and be my own boss and like be able to have an impact on people. So it's like I always tell people this is the dream job I didn't know I have. Like I had no idea when I was, a kid, this is what I was going to do with my life.
I love that. I always remember my clients too. They'll be like, "Oh my gosh, you have like the best job ever doing boudoir photography." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
I know. Yeah. And you know what? I think I get that a lot too, but I also think like there's just like in anything else. I mean, this is a job. Like this is my livelihood, my business. And so, yeah, it's a lot of fun, but there's also a lot of work that I think that for the most part, when people like look at, a creative industry like photography, they just think it's all fun. And
Mm.
majority of it is fun and it's very rewarding, but there's a lot of work that goes into it that they don't know about.
Yeah, I love that point. That's for sure. So, how did you get into photography? You just randomly, or when you had kids, or?
Yeah, that's such a good story. So I always like had interest in photography and like I was always the one that's like, oh, let's take pictures, like the childish stuff. But then I was always like the designated photographer at every
Yeah.
event. But I convinced my husband to let me buy a camera when my son was, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4. And for the most of his life, my son's life, I was kind of a stay-at-home mom. So like oops, did I
You're good.
disconnect? Okay, sorry.
It's
My
okay.
little alert came on. So I was mostly a stay-at-home mom with him and we didn't have a ton of extra money. So when I told him I wanted to splurge on a camera, he was totally convinced that this was going to be like everything else that I dabble in, that I like get bored with. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to. So he was really concerned about that. And so that's kind of my joke with him is like, look now, like, aren't you glad you let me splurge on that first camera forever ago?
Yeah, awesome. So, did you just get it just to take pictures of your son, or?
No, I mean, I did have interest in like doing photography. And
Okay.
so at that point, I had no idea what that looked like, but I just
Okay.
knew I enjoyed like photographing people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's always something too, like photographers, some people, they like to photograph landscapes
Mm-hmm.
or fish. I mean, there's just so
Yeah.
many things. For me, it was always people.
People and emotions. I love
Yeah.
emotions,
Yeah.
capturing emotions. So then was it at that point that you decided that you wanted to make money and a business at it, or kind of what was that transition point for you?
So I think the more I did it, it was really just a hobby. But I did start working again, and so I worked in an office, typical office job that
Yeah.
I hated, but it was not for me.
Yeah.
But I think that I eventually I joined tons of like photography communities and like I saw how many people were actually making money. And here I am like charging like $75 for a session, like just so embarrassing thinking back at that. I mean, not really, because everybody starts there, I feel like, but
Everybody. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh my God, like what if I could make a living doing this? What if I didn't have to just do this on the weekends, you know? So I think that
Yeah.
was when I was like, let's do this.
I love that. How did that conversation go with hubby?
It was a gradual process, but
Mhm.
I think that, you know, the more I picked up steam and like he could actually see that I really enjoyed what I did and I was pretty decent at
Yeah.
it. I think he was okay with it. And
Yeah.
really, when I took the final leap, my absolute like, this is it, I'm going full blown,
Mhm.
was I got pregnant with my daughter,
Mhm.
and I had her in 2018, and I was going to be on maternity leave. And I
Mhm.
said, listen, I know it's coming. I'm going to save up like 3 months of my income,
Mhm.
and I'm going to see if I can do photography in those 3 months, you know, because by the time you calculate childcare for 2 kids and then me being away, like maybe I can, this is like my trial. And
Yeah.
so I proved it to him that, you know, I could do it. And he had no
Yeah.
issues with it. He said, fly, baby, fly.
I love that. I love having that support system. I'm kind of diving into these questions in the sense of like, if anybody watching is kind of in that position of, I love photography. I have a job that I'm not crazy about, but I want to do that. So just kind of watching your transition and hearing about your transition, did you know exactly like what genre you were going to shoot at that point when you decided, like kind of tell me like, what were the like turning points? So you're at an office job, you know,
Mhm.
you're kind of interested in doing photography, and then you get pregnant and you're still working the office job, right?
Right.
Okay. And are you doing any photography, like getting paid for any photography at that point on the side?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
always on weekends. I would work pretty much every weekend I could, and
Okay.
evenings if possible.
Okay. And you just shooting families, or is this boudoir?
Yeah. No, I think I did start doing a little bit of boudoir, but and not right away. I was honestly at the point and like in this bad mindset of like I'll take anything if it's paid. So I didn't really specialize in anything right away. I would try anything.
I think that's good though, because I think that gives you practice. It gives you a chance to like really hone in your skills. And it's kind of like, to be honest with you, it's almost like a paid internship. I think a lot of times we look back at like those beginnings and we're like, oh my gosh, I worked for that. But at the same time, it's not like we paid $50,000 to go to a college and
Yeah.
learn these skills. We actually just got life skill, and we got actually like a paid internship almost.
That
Um,
is such good. Yeah, I love that. You're so right. And I always tell people that doing that made me realize that boudoir was it for me. Like I had to do a little bit of everything to figure out what I liked.
mhm.
I think that's important. You know, you
Yeah.
don't know that right away until you try it all.
Yeah, I love that. So when did you find boudoir?
I think I started really getting into it in like 2016. So,
Okay.
I would do like marathons every weekend, not every
Mhm.
weekend, but you
Yeah.
know, like for Valentine's Day and
Yeah.
before I really had any idea about it. But once I did like my first one and I had somebody come do hair and makeup and everything, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so me. This is so much fun. Like, and then I realized that there's this power in photography to like you know, show women a different side of them that they don't get to see. And like, for me, it was, I know that there's a method behind this. If I can just perfect my method and get it down, then I can just impact every single woman I photograph, you know? So I knew that was it for me.
Yeah. I love that, because I just feel like that was the same thing for me. Like I tried it, and just the first shoot. And let me tell you what, looking back at that very first shoot, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
Like the lighting, the posing, like all of it.
Oh,
There was like, I think there's one pose that I'm very proud of, but like looking back, but it was that moment. It was just like, I just knew. I was like, I'm not going back and doing anything else. Like I did for the next 6 months, spend time doing anything and everything just to raise money to launch my boudoir business, like get the website and like get legal and like all of those things. But like, it's just crazy. Like every boudoir photographer I talk to, just they hit it and they're like, this is it. And I feel like that's probably the same for weddings and families and newborns. Like you just know once you do it that that's it. And I love the fact that you said try everything and see what fits. I
Yeah.
really think when you niche and you find that thing that makes you alive, that lights you up, like it's so much easier, I think, to grow in a business when you're doing something that really lights you up.
Right,
For
exactly. And
sure.
I think also not being split in a million different directions, like
Mhm.
being able to just be the best at that one thing is I look back and my mindset was, well, how on earth can I turn away money if somebody wants a senior session? And it just, you eventually just get to that point where it's like, that's not my forte. That's not my best,
Yeah.
and I'm only going to give my best at what I'm the best at.
Yeah.
And so it got easier for me to be like, no, this is what I do.
Yeah. I think that's a transition too all photographers go through is going from taking anything that pays money to realizing that once you find your niche, you got to become the best at it in your area. And when you can say that, then that's when the big dollars start coming in, is because people who are wanting to pay for and value like photography and they're looking for an expert and a professional, they're typically looking for someone who specializes in whatever thing that they're looking for. It's like going to a back surgeon. You don't just want a general surgeon if you're going to have somebody work on your back. I mean, that's a little extreme, but you want the best back surgeon there is to do that. And I
Definitely.
think when people are looking to spend money, they're looking for someone who niches, like especially if it's like newborns and you're going to be handling their newborn baby. They want somebody who specializes in newborns and is an expert at it. So I think while you can do everything and you can have multiple genres, when you're really wanting to hone in on that niche and really become the best known photographer for that in your area, is to focus on being the expert and niching.
Yeah. Yep. I think
I love that.
that makes such a difference.
Yeah. So, okay, so maternity leave starts
Hmm.
and what happens?
I still was taking on anything and everything, but then also really pushing the boudoir part.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would say I did really pretty decent, and I was, I set myself like a minimum goal, like if I at least do this, then I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was like shortly, I would say maybe 10 months into it. No, it would probably be like a year and a half into it. That's where I was like, okay, I like where I'm going, but this is not like, I want to go just all in. And my daughter at that point was a year and a half, and that's where I found you, and we, connected. And that's where I feel like, I discovered all of the things that I didn't know were important in business. I knew what I was doing in photography, but like realizing that I needed to focus more on the business aspect of it was where it totally changed the game for me. It's a no-brainer anymore. I'll never
I
go
love
back.
that. Yeah. I'm gonna backtrack just a little bit though. So maternity leave, and then you didn't go back to your job, I'm assuming.
Right. Yes. No.
Okay.
So I
So
just
you were
said,
able to
I'm good.
at
Yeah.
least replace or semi-replace the money you were making at the office job.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I love that. I think one of the biggest leaps is for when people do make that leap of quitting their job and going full time, or, being like, okay, I'm going to do this. It's like one of those scary moments.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think that if I ever had any advice for somebody like making that transition, it's like, I think we get so worked up and think about, oh my God, I'm quitting my job. I'm quitting this, whatever. Well, don't think about it like that. Think of, I need to make this amount of money in order to be, and how many sessions do I need to do to make this? And so then when you break it down into smaller goals, it's not as scary as saying, I need to book 2 sessions this week,
Mhm.
or I just quit my job, like just looking at it differently, it just allows you to just, and then I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was so worried to make that leap for so long. But when I broke it down into these little, these smaller things to focus on, I'm like, that was so easy.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's amazing. What's the one thing that you wish you had known when you began your photography business?
Oh, that's such a hard question. The one thing, I would say to focus on this as an actual business, and to do the research and set everything up right away. Like, even if, to me, I think at that point when I was first starting, I'm like, I'm just like a small fish. I don't need any of this stuff. But then it was like, oh my gosh, if I would have had the business, all of the things set in place when I first started, I would have been in such an easier spot versus when I'm like, it's moving, I've got so much momentum. It's harder to implement those things once you've got the ball rolling. And when the ball gets rolling, you don't have as much free time to set all of those things into places. So I think that's what I would tell myself. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. What would you say is your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
My biggest failure in photography or in my business?
Either. Doesn't matter.
My biggest failure. I think my biggest, oh my gosh, I don't even know. Can you give me?
Are you if you're like me, which Damon always tells me, you never remember the things where that went wrong. You only remember the positives. And I'm like, that's a good thing, right? Because I focus on the positives. But I also think failures are a positive in the sense of we learn from them, and they're what actually propels us to grow, and they're actually what gives us the information to grow. Otherwise we would stay stagnant. So I don't know, you could think of it maybe what was the biggest hiccup in building your business or in photography, and what did you learn from it?
Sure. I would say that in the beginning, my biggest struggle was taking myself seriously, setting the boundaries that I needed to with clients, and not being as much of a pushover.
Okay, love that.
I think knowing the difference between oh, well, I need to assert myself here, or I don't really want them to leave me a bad review or something, because there's a way that you can present yourself, and people respect that when you take your business seriously. And so, all the little things like making sure my contracts were good, making sure everything was documented, not just, verbal agreements and things like that. Those small little, even if maybe I knew them, it was an acquaintance, that I worked with, just setting practices and sticking to it. That would be what I needed to work on, I think.
Got it. I'm going to change that for my question. Instead of saying, what was your biggest failure? What was your biggest struggle? Because I think that's going to go over smoother.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, sorry. I was like,
no, actually, I'm glad that I just learned, right? It's awesome.
Right. And I think that when you talk about your biggest failure, I just think that it's so hard for me to look at anything and say it like a failure, because I'm alive, everything's working out well. Every time something happens, you just kind of learn from it. So we had this conversation. You were like, I was like, I'm afraid to take this leap and fail. And it's like, no, it's not a failure. It's you learn the lesson. So
yeah, exactly. I think everybody's so scared of the word failure. And I even say I started my photography business right out of high school and failed miserably, but I love the fact that I did that. Because it gave me context when I actually got business experience, and then crushed it. I wouldn't have known the difference. And so the contrast in that is great. And it's you learn so much from your struggles or your failures. So I love that. And I don't even see it as a failure. What is that quote? I think they said that you can't fail if you never quit.
I like it.
Yeah. There's no such thing as failure unless you quit, or something along those lines. But yeah. So what are the top 3 best resources that have helped you along the way while building your business?
I don't know if I could single it down. I just think that being a part of a community of creatives, and I don't even think there's one group, but just multiple groups, and taking bits and pieces. And I think that the biggest, absolutely changing thing for me was seeing the success people were having, and especially in my genre. I just got to the point where I was like, why not me? Why, if they can do it, the proof of that, it's just I can do it too. I believe in myself, But I think all those little groups that I've been in and, working with you, I think that you learn something from everybody that you connect with. And some people are on, different parts of their business journey.
Mm.
And that is so useful because they'll tell you about the hiccups or the failures that they had. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to avoid that. Or, maybe you're like having an issue and they're like, oh, I have this down. Let me share with you some of the tips that I have.
Yeah.
It's just been so helpful connecting with other people.
Yeah, I love that. And that's one of the foundations for this top 1% spotlight interviews, is so that photographers can watch these and they can see like the journey that everybody's had. Because I think sometimes when you see people who are so successful, you're like, well, why am I not there yet? And I think one of the common things with the interviews I've been doing is people are like, no, it took me years. It took me years to get to this point of like figuring things out. But here's the things where I had hiccups or struggles, and here's the solutions that I found so that people can learn how to maybe even fast track faster than we even did it.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that's amazing. Do you have any favorite like podcasts, books, mentors out there, resources, or like even like tools, business tools such as CRMs, things that make your life easier? Like plug anything, because if you have anything that works that you love, those are resources too I'd love to share with anybody watching.
Okay. I'm like very much like a self-taught kind of person. Like I've always sort of had my own motivation
Yeah.
to like succeed, but I would say as far as like tools and things go, once I started streamlining things and having a designated space, like, using Dubsado for like contracts and invoicing and having everything in one spot, I think that was super helpful. Like learning how to do like the drip campaign through MailChimp, just like smart albums, designing albums. I mean, there's so many tools that I can't believe I was doing this all by hand before. Like what on earth, these things have saved my life. So I think just anything that you can find to help make your business processes easier is going to make all the difference. And I know like the one time this when we just spoke not long ago and you said, now you're going to be buying back your time. I can't remember if it was you or Damon, but like those words just have been just bouncing back and forth through my head, because I'm like, every little, thing that I invest in with my business, it's saving me time and sanity, and it's allowing me to be better and just keep going.
Well, at some point, you reach a point of success where, in order to scale and grow, you no longer can expand because you only have 24 hours in a day and you only have so much time, especially with family and kiddos. So, in order to grow and scale, you have to start outsourcing. And at some point, that looks different for everybody, but that expansion is buying back time. You're paying other people to do work so that you can have more time, depending on what's important to you, whether that's you want to shoot more or you want to be more present at home with your family.
Right.
So that's fantastic. So just to wrap up, what is one piece of advice that you would give to other photographers who are just starting out their business, or they're building their business, but they're kind of stuck and they're just not sure what to do next?
I would say to find a mentor or a coach, or somebody that is in the position that you want to be, because I think that they'll be really helpful in giving you like the secrets to success that they've found. And just also, I feel like working on your own mindset. Once you believe that you're capable of having success, it's just literally going to happen. And so you're kind of like resisting your own success by thinking that you can't be in the top 1%. Literally anybody is capable of it. But I also think, finding that mentor, having them, watching what they're doing, learning from other people's mistakes, but even more important, like just take the leap. Like, everybody at some point takes a risk and they make an investment, but if you believe in yourself, that risk is always going to pay itself off, whether it's utter success from that risk, or it's a really amazing lesson learned,
Mhm.
it's not ever going to go wrong. You just have to do it.
Yeah. I love that you pointed out too, like before you take the investment, believe in yourself. Cause I think there has to be a commitment to executing whatever the mentor or coach or course or program is asking of you. But I love that, like belief in yourself. That's one of the things I recommend is if like, hey, if you don't think that you're the best photographer in your area yet, go do whatever it takes to get to that point,
Yeah.
to where you feel so confident that you're like, no, everybody should shoot with me for this specific shoot because I'm going to give them the best service and the best quality art. And when you have that confidence, then business will be so much easier, and investing in growing your business, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think that as a creative, we often criticize our own work. So you kind of said in the beginning, like if you're not the best photographer, but you also said if you can give the best service.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something that if you can stop panicking about how good your work is, like obviously be consistent and,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, but you like people are not comparing work all the time. They're comparing your personality, how you're approaching them, like how do you make them feel. I mean, in the service industry, you have to make people feel good or they're never gonna take a second look at you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Commodity-based industry, you can either compete on price or you can compete on service. And I think that what people used to think of as a brand, where they're thinking logo and brand colors and like all of those things, I think a brand is how your company or business or you make people feel when they interact with you, whether that's your website, whether that's personally through email, through communication, like how someone feels after interacting with your business. I think that to me is your brand.
Yep,
Um,
I
so,
agree.
yeah, I love that you pointed that out. One last question, because it popped into my head while we were talking about investing in yourself and finding a coach and mentor.
Okay.
What do you feel like a lot of photographers out there, I'm sure, are like, okay, great, that's a great idea, but I don't have the money to do that. What would you say was the key or the thing that helped you kind of make that investment?
um I think that my husband, talking over with my husband, I was afraid to take that risk and, but like he had a really good point to me. He's like, how many people go to college and spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for a degree that they don't do anything with. And he's like, this is no different than you taking that kind of a risk. You're taking a bet on yourself. And so I think that if you can just be honest with yourself and if you have to crunch some numbers, be creative, like take some time. Like you don't have to do it right this second. Make it like in 6 months or 3 months or whatever. Just if you are dedicated to it and you sit down and make a plan, you're going to make it happen. But you have to believe that you're going to make it happen. You can't just say, well, I don't know what I'm doing, but this person says they have everything, so I'm just going to do what they say. And you can follow it line by line by line, but if you don't believe that you're doing a good job with it or you're capable of it, it's not going to make it worth it.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited for everybody to watch this interview because it has so many great tidbits in it. So
Thank
thank
you.
you
I appreciate
again.
it. Yeah.
Have a good day, love.
You too.
Bye.